John, you ready? Yes, sir. Oh, that's okay. You guys ready?
Ready.
If people could please take their seats, we're going to get the meeting started. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. And I'd ask Manny Rodriguez if you could come and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Manny. And can we have a roll call, Yvonne?
Yes, Councilmember D'Amico. Councilmember Horvath.
Here.
Councilmember Meister.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Duran.
Here.
Mayor Heilman.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Yvonne. We'll now turn to the approval of the agenda. Are there any items that staff needs to table? Okay. Council, any changes to the agenda?
I'd like to try to move some things to consent if we can.
Okay, let's see if we can move any items to consent.
Is there support for moving item 4B to consent, status update on the city, new city line X vehicles?
I have some comments, but I can say them during council member comments, and if I have any, if people want to disagree, we could always pull it.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's move it to consent tentatively. If there are comments under council member comments that the council has concerns about, we will then pull that and put it back on the regular agenda. Other things.
Is it possible to move item 4C, the homeless needs assessment and demographic survey results, to consent?
I have a lot to say.
Okay. Is it possible to move item 5A, the streamlining review of commercial projects under 30,000 square feet?
I would love that.
Me too.
I have a comment, but I'll make it during council member comments.
And I wonder if we, under council member comments, can we address 4A, East Side Community Priorities Plan, or do we need a fuller discussion on that?
I have comments on that.
I do as well.
Okay.
I did have one I wanted to raise. We received a request to have item 6A be reviewed by Rent Stabilization Commission before it came to us for full consideration. I just wanted to defer. I know Councilmember D'Amico really had initiated that. Council had also given direction on this coming forward, but as a matter of procedure, normally things like this go to our commissions first. So since it was raised to us, this is the first time we're able to discuss it as a council, so I wanted to bring it up.
My understanding is that this ordinance is something that's mandated by state law. No, it is not?
No, it's not mandated by state law. It replicates a state law provision that applies to non-rent stabilized housing units for rent stabilized housing units, but it's not requirement of state law.
Okay. Council, what's your pleasure with respect to 6A? Do you want to leave it on the agenda, table it, refer
I would
it?
table it to the Rent Stabilization Commission for review and comment.
Yeah, I think that's good.
And we're all in agreement with that? Okay. 6A will be tabled. It'll be referred back to staff to bring to the Rent Stabilization Commission for their input. Okay. All right. I do have a couple of comments on 2S and 2T. I know there are a couple of speakers on, at least one speaker on item 2S. I'd actually like to pull 2S, but if it's okay with council, we can hear the comments under public comments at the beginning.
Okay.
All right, so we'll pull 2S, and with Yvonne, you've been writing all this down. Do you have all of the changes that we've made?
I do. We're going to move 4B and 5A to consent table, item 6A, and refer it back to the Rent Stabilization Commission for input, and we're going to pull item 2S.
Okay, any other changes to the agenda? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion. There's already been one, and we'll go ahead and vote for it. And we now have an approved agenda. Thank you, everyone. Adjournment motions. Any adjournment motions tonight? Lindsay?
Thank you, Mayor. It's our tradition in the city of West Hollywood to adjourn our council meetings in honor of the military service personnel who were killed in service to our country since our last meeting. They are Army Staff Sergeant Brian C. Black, age 35, Army Staff Sergeant Jeremiah W. Johnson, age 39, Army Sergeant David T. Johnson, age 25, Army Staff Dustin M. Wright, age 29, Army Specialist Alexander W. Missildine, age 20. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Lauren? John or John? John Duran first.
Oh, okay. I've got two adjournment requests. First, Tom DeMille has asked if we would adjourn in memory of Warren Burton, who is a resident at 980 Palm. He was an actor who lived in West Hollywood for 20 years, was on several daytime soap operas, and won an Emmy for his role on All My Children, a resident at 980 Palm, and will be missed by friends and family that knew him there. The other adjournment request that I have is for Georgia Garrett Norris. Georgia Garrett Norris was an attorney down in Orange County. I was her law clerk during the beginning of the AIDS epidemic. She was one of the co-founders of the AIDS Services Foundation of Orange County, the AIDS Walk of Orange County, the Elections Committee County of Orange. She was one of the godmothers of the LGBT community down in Orange County. And if you think activism is tough, imagine activism in the 80s in Orange County. It was a really tough place to do this work. And she passed away of cancer. Asked that we adjourn in her memory.
Great. John D'Amico? Okay. That concludes our adjournment motions. We'll now turn to presentations. The first one, I'm going to ask all of my colleagues to join me for. Tonight on the agenda, we have a report of our East Side Working Group, and we had a number of people who served on the East Side Working Group, and I don't know if they're all here tonight, but this was a group of 15 East Side community stakeholders who worked very hard to work with our staff and our consultants to develop a plan for the priorities of the east side of West Hollywood. And tonight we're considering adopting that plan, and it would not be possible to do this without the hard work of people in the community who dedicated their time, provided us with their input, shared their expertise. So if there are members of the East Side Working Group here, I'd ask that all of them would come forward, and I'm going to ask my colleagues to come forward as well as we honor the members of the East Side Working Group, and that includes Alexander Baisley, Marina Berkman, Justine Block, and of course they have them upside down, Chad Bluen, who I saw earlier, Carlos Flores, Carlos here, Emily Gable. Oh, they have them in alphabetical order. Todd Hallman. Todd, are you here? Keith Holt. Brian Holt. Steve Martin. Steve. Jared Meisler. Catherine Sears. Danny Shaker. Jesse Slansky, Agassi Topchian, Neil Zavzlovsky. All right, come on, Council. Thank you all for your service. Really appreciate it. Now, later this evening, you're going to hear a presentation about the East Side Plan, and I hope you'll keep in mind the people who put a lot of time into it and thank them as well. We also have one other presentation here tonight, and this is for an event that's upcoming. Is Sarah Whitaker here? Sarah? Sarah's here. All right. We have a proclamation for the runway benefit for Make-A-Wish. This is the Young Legends event. It's an annual runway show that brings together talented fashion and entertainment icons in a celebration of creativity, and it all benefits the Make-A-Wish Foundation. This year's event will feature London designer Christian Cowan, and he will showcase a collection of archival and custom pieces as models walk the runway. Since its founding, the city has been very supportive of philanthropy, creativity, the arts, and the well-being of children. The Make-A-Wish Foundation in Los Angeles has granted more than 9,000 wishes to Los Angeles County children with life-threatening medical conditions. This event is being sponsored by Wen Hair Care and Chaz Dean, and we know that he's been very generous in supporting causes. So on behalf of the city, I want to present this to you, Sarah, and thank you for your work in bringing this event to the community. Please join me in congratulating.
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for recognizing our event. This is the second fundraiser that we have for Make-A-Wish. My company started granting wishes several years ago, about 5 years ago, and ever since we did the very first wish, we got completely hooked and knew that we wanted to start our own fundraiser for them. And since we had a runway background, we knew that that was kind of the industry that we wanted to get around this event. This one is really special for us because we have Paper Magazine backing it. We got a lot of great people involved already. We have Samantha Ronson that agreed to DJ our runway show. We have really talented artists coming on board to bring all of their different skills together to really make this a one-of-a-kind event. We just got American street artist Alec Monopoly, who's going to be doing a live art installation and actually teaching the kids how he does his art right before they go on stage to do the runway show. So it's kind of become this all-immersive art and fashion kind of runway show and event that people can come and get behind. And it raises money so that these kids can get their wishes granted, which really helps them stay positive through their treatment and beyond, and is also great for their families. So I want to thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Sarah. All right, we'll now turn to public comment, and we have a number of speakers who are here to speak on consent calendar items that have not been pulled, and we'll take them first. The first speaker is John Erickson, to be followed by Tom DeMille.
Hello, Mayor Heilman and Honorable City Council members. My name is John Erickson. I'm the president of the Hollywood chapter for the National Organization for Women. And yes, I am male and representing a feminist organization, but we're here to really thank you for 2R tonight and for your continued support of women and girls programming throughout the city of West Hollywood with the sponsorship of the Vagina Monologues in 2018. Special thanks to Councilmember Horvath for bringing this item forward. Hollywood Now put this item on last year, and we were able to raise over $2,000 for Planned Parenthood. And we were able to bring together 25 local activists right here in this very room. And it was such an empowering event, and we're so happy that we're going to be able to do it again. And just want to say special thanks to the TAB, the LGAB, and the WAB, who have all signed on to be co-sponsors, as well as to City Hall staff, Cleo Smith, Meg Reith, not Meg Ryan, and and Larissa Fuchs and Andy Lovano for making this happen. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. Tom DeMille to be followed by Miguel Ortiz.
Tom DeMille, West Hollywood. Thank you, John Duran, for mentioning my neighbor and friend, Warren Burton, Emmy Award-winning actor. He was such a nice man. Pink has a new song. It's called What About Us? And it's about government failure. And 79% of the residents of West Hollywood don't vote. Number one, let's get the homeless off the streets. The way to get the homeless off the streets is you help them. They don't want to be helped, and if you help them so much, they will never come back. That's how you get rid of the homeless, okay? Let's light up our city. This is why I didn't get the Public Safety Commission, by the way. Of 26 years of being a non-commissioner, I was doing that unofficially, pulling people out of burning cars and saving people's lives, and I've got the plaques to prove it, but I wasn't good enough for that. So I will be on the ballot in 2019, Ms. Horvath. Graduate 100 residents from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department community policing every year. Put more security ambassadors on the street. Clean up our city, the furniture, the washing machines, the TVs, the couches. Come on, what are we, pigs? Come on, restrict developers' money or be dirty candidates. You're either a dirty candidate or you're not. If you take developers' money, you're a dirty candidate, and I'll make you one. Communication with residents. Oh, I want to thank my 3 grandmothers, too. I've adopted grandparent program. I have 3 grandparents now, Donna Sauer, her sister Barbara, hello, and Ruth Williams, Grandma Ruth Williams. Thank you very much. Restrict communication with residents is very important. We can do all kinds of communications now, but we don't communicate. Why? Why? We don't see you walking down the street ever. You might as well all be boogeymen because we never see you, okay? Truck delivery days and times. Do more for our seniors and disabled communities. Have more humanitarianism in the city. Creative city with no place to sell your art. Listen to the community and your board members and commissioners that you appoint.
Thank you, Tom. Miguel Ortiz to be followed by Anna Sweat.
Hello, I would like to thank you guys for allowing me to speak. I'm talking in regards to the mobile HIV and STD at-risk initiative. My name is Miguel Ortiz. I'm the program manager for AIDS Healthcare Foundation Mobile Testing. And I just want to let you guys know that with the collaboration that we've done with West Hollywood over the years, it's been a great collaborative. We test here nightly when other agencies are closed. We've been able to consistently test up to 10,000 individuals throughout the calendar year. In 2016, we tested 9,307 individuals, identified 80 reactive clients. This year alone, in the first 3 quarters, we were able to identify almost more than that. 9,334 individuals have identified 95 reactives this year alone, with still 3 more months to go. So it's been a great collaborative. We also are able to provide STI screening nightly. We try to do it at least 5 times a week out in Santa Monica in front of 8900 Santa Monica Boulevard. We've also been able to implement, like when there's meningitis outbreaks, we're actually able to provide that as well inside our mobile clinics, inside the units. So it's been a great collaborative. We hope that you guys can continue this collaborative with this initiative. My team is out there 360 days out of the calendar year. So it's been great, and thank you for your continued support. Hopefully that can continue.
Thank you for your work. Anna Sweat to be followed by Jasmine Crichton.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Hi. Hi. Hi, nice seeing everybody. First of all, I've been so depressed all day today. Music didn't help. My art therapy at home didn't help. Usually it does, but I've had a very, very depressing day. And having been with the County Department of Mental Health, I learned a long time ago how to combat depression, but today nothing worked, you know. I was in bed most of the day. So being here tonight is really a plus for me, you know, seeing these bright, cheerful faces in the crowd that know me and I know them for a long time. It's nice to be here. You know, I'm feeling better this evening, really. And as a segue from what Tom DeMille said, I notified the sheriffs about the Section 8 opening up in the city of West Hollywood. I sent them a fax. 3 days this month, they're going to be taking city of Los Angeles vouchers. They're going to be applying, using the application process for new opening up in a city of Los Angeles, not West Hollywood. So maybe they can bring some of the transients and the homeless back into the city of LA for housing. You know, hopefully they'll be able to work something out. And I want to address 2T. I don't know what bollard installation, maybe you can clarify that later. Bollard, I don't really know what that word means. It's something to protect pedestrians, but I don't know what exactly it is, and I would like that answered. And also, the policies to address residential parking concerns. I don't drive, I don't have a vehicle right now, but I see many people still fighting for parking in the streets all the time. You know, it's one person after another, you know, trying to get the best suitable parking spaces. And I think that's a very good idea, you know, that item 2V is wonderful, that they're working, researching that. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Jasmine Creighton to be followed by Jimmy Sienapar, sorry.
Good evening, Council. My name is Jasmine Creighton. My preferred gender pronouns are gender fierce, okay? And I'm standing before you because it's come to my attention that we are being asked to pay for encroachments in order to park our testing van on at La Brea and Santa Monica at Target, where there's a large community of trans individuals who are not being tested in the actual clinics and are testing positive. I personally have tested someone positive in the last 3 weeks at La Brea and Target, at the Target Center on La Brea, and I'm asking that the fee be waived for our truck at APIT. I'm sponsored. I'm standing here on behalf of APIT, which stands for Asian Pacific AIDS Intervention Team here in the city, and I'm asking that those fees be waived in order that we can continue providing services to the individuals that are not actually being, you know, testing in clinics or going to the center. We want to make sure that we continue to provide adequate care and information to our members of the LGBT community that actually migrate in that particular area. And throughout West Hollywood, we make sure that we are uplifting them, affirming them, and centering them, and make sure that their health is at optimum care. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. The item before us tonight is to waive the encroachment fees. Jasmine, did you hear that? The item tonight is to waive the encroachment fees.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank Derek Murray for inviting us here tonight.
Sure. Jimmy Sienapar to be followed by Randy Feilish.
Hello, I also work with APAIT with Jasmine, and we asked for you to waive the parking fees just because as a nonprofit, you know, we don't have the funds every night to pay for an encroachment permit. And, you know, we are testing people who are positive out there. We could test 5 people in one night, and the chances of them testing positive are very high. So, like, when we're doing testing near Target and La Brea, let's say we test like 4 people and one of them would test positive, and that's very consistent. We've tested at least 10 people last year who are positive in the West Hollywood area. And we're not just offering HIV testing, you know, we're offering people resources such as if they have any questions with housing, also if they need any behavioral health needs. So it's not just limited to HIV testing. You know, we're finding out what the community needs are, and especially we're there testing from like 7 to almost 1 a.m. when all the other agencies are closed, and I believe just waiving these permits, you know, would be really important for us to continue our work. So thank you.
Thank you. Randy Feilish to be followed by Stephanie Harker.
Good evening, council members. I'm the person that is here to speak on the 2S agenda item. I'm not too sure what happened to it.
You can speak now.
Okay, I'm glad I can, because I drove 2 hours to come here. Is it agenda item going to be another time?
It is going to be tonight, but it'll be later in the meeting. It won't be part of the consent calendar.
Oh, okay. Okay. Good evening, council members. My name is Randy Feilish, and I'm the Southern California representative for Project Coyote. We're a nonprofit-based coalition of educators, scientists, and wildlife biologists who promote coexistence between people and wildlife. I am a volunteer. Project Coyote supports Council Member Lindsay Horvath's recommendation for coexistence and education in your proposed coyote management plan. We support a proactive plan that emphasizes public education and effective behavior modification to reduce conflicts. Coyotes play a vital role in maintaining healthy ecosystems, providing free rodent control, and other ecological services. We developed a coyote management plan in my city of Calabasas and most recently in the city of Montebello. We also work with the city of Los Angeles and when we banned snare traps in 2014, and we promote education for wildlife coexistence. I commend the city of West Hollywood on your longstanding commitment to the welfare of animals and humans alike. The city of West Hollywood has become a role model and a leader in environmental animal stewardship with the ban of the sale of fur, and now with your proactive stance on coyote and wildlife management. We support your recommendation. I will leave this with the city clerk. I just brought a couple brochures that we did in the city of Calabasas, Coyotes in the City, and it has all the educational tips on how people can coexist. And also our brochures, you know, coexisting with coyotes.
Thank you. Stephanie Harker, to be followed by Greg Davidson.
Stephanie Harker, City of West Hollywood. Good evening, everyone. I just had a thought when the previous speaker, if we could maybe add in the raccoon situation that's going on in West Hollywood. We've had 2 different dogs, pet dogs in our neighborhoods be bitten on the nose, and one had to go through a rabies shot and things, so we might want to think of putting more wildlife into that group. I wanted to thank Oscar Delgado, Steve Campbell, and Helen Collins for combining the Off-Leash Dog Committee with the full-on Public Facilities Commission. And I hope that I know we are getting 2 new off-leash dog parks here in West Hollywood Park, but I hope that we can look forward to adding additional dog parks throughout the city so that people don't have to travel so far or get in their car to take their dog to a doggy park. On a lighter note, I have a friend who lives in Santa Rosa, and she has started a group, which I told her I would see what I could do down on our end, this end of the state. As you are well aware, the devastation of the fires in the Northern California area, and she wants to try and bring a little cheer to the more than 1,000 children who have been displaced or completely lost their homes by sending Halloween costumes to the shelters. And that will take place, of course, in the next week and a half. If anyone wants to contact me to contribute either monetarily, if you have children's costumes from the ages of 4 and 12, I'll be happy to get in touch with you. You can reach me at protectplumberpark@gmail.com. That's our email address. Thank you, and I hope that you can, especially since we're such big Halloween people here, that we can bring a little cheer to these kids who have lost everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg Davidson, to be followed by Amanda Bleish.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Greg Davidson, and I work with Calpipe Security Bollards, and I'm speaking on agenda item 2T. And we are a LA County-based team of manufacturers and experts in security bollards and their application and working with municipalities to better evaluate certain areas and the implementation of security bollards. And just to touch on what Anna Sweat had said, a security bollard is a a structural steel post that's usually found in parking lots, in front of buildings, or in parks where public gather, and it's a means to protect against vehicle incursions. Cal Pipe security bollards actually worked with Times Square and New York City officials to implement the security bollards in the Times Square Plaza redesign, which actually played a crucial role in stopping the errant driver in May that decided to attack the crowds of pedestrians. And so I'm just here today to offer my services and Cal Pipe security bollard services in terms of evaluating certain areas that the city may be looking at so that we can better address those needs. West Hollywood does a really great job of pedestrian safety, and I would just like to be here to help. And like I said, we're based in LA County, actually in Rancho Dominguez, about 2 blocks from StubHub Center. And we manufacture everything here at our facility. So we're just a good made in the USA product. And mostly, I'd like to just be able to work with you and your city officials to be able to help evaluate the trends that we're seeing, the standards that are being implemented, and just to be able to offer our help. So I thank you for the time.
Thank you, Greg. I don't know if any of our transportation staff is here this evening. Is there any way? Andy, are you in the back there? Perhaps you can give Andy your contact information and she can forward it to our transportation staff.
Sure. That sounds great. Thank you so much.
Amanda Blige, to be followed by Joy Freiberg.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Mayor Hyman, council members, Yvonne, great to see you all. Just came here to ask for support on 2R, the presentation 2018 of the Vagina Monologues. West Hollywood being a wonderful place, a really great community where everyone is really able to find his or her individual voice, and this presentation is one where we can really do so. So I feel that my friend John Erickson really said it quite well, but so yes, please support us if you can. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Joy, to be followed by Michael Voshtilevich.
Good evening. Joy Freiberg, West Hollywood resident and district leader volunteer from the Humane Society of the United States. And I would like to speak in support of the city putting in place a coyote management plan that emphasizes humane and effective models, such as the one outlined in the Humane Society of the United States Coexistence Management Plan. Research and history has shown that no matter how many coyotes you remove from the neighborhood, there will always be more to take their place. Therefore, the best approach is to educate our residents, train our neighborhood coyotes to avoid people and pets through hazing techniques, eliminate their incentive to come into our neighborhoods by removing food attractants, and by supervising our pets while outside. I hope the city can serve as a role model for other California communities by putting in place a smart, effective, humane plan to coexist with coyotes. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Michael Voshtilevich, to be followed by Roy Oldenkamp.
Council, members of the public and staff, Michael Voshtilevich, City of West Hollywood. Last Wednesday, October 11th, only one public facilities commissioner showed up for the published in the calendar meeting. This was pretty ironic because in the previous month, the chair of the PFC argued for the dismantling of the off-leash Hart Park group when it comes to those who are members of the public not paid by the city and not appointed by council members. His argument was that they don't show up for the meetings. The truth is this: although last week's meeting was published in the calendar, it was canceled, despite the public not being made aware of it. And with regards to the Hart Park, having reached out to those who have sat on that ad hoc, there is a sense of dismissiveness and a demeaning attitude by those who do get $75 a month from this city. So it is obvious that the city, under current leadership, does not want the public's engagement. This goes against the goals and policies G1, G2, and G3. As such, and as the city has shown a disservice towards its disabled and seniors by the fact that Hart Park is not ADA accessible, and it has shown a disdain or a disrespect for the AIDS memorial that has been there for 30 years. It's time that the city give back Hart Park to the city of LA that rightfully owns it. The city does not deserve Hart Park with the leadership that is on Public Facility Commission today.
Thank you. Roy Oldenkamp, and then we have, I think, about 4 or 5 more speakers. I'm just going to take them now. Roy?
Good evening, Roy Oldenkamp, City of West Hollywood. I wanted to thank the city, National Geographic, and LA Conservancy for their Formosa Cafe event. I know many of you went. I wanted to also state that the voting to keep the funds coming into our city to restore the Formosa Cafe train car goes on until Halloween. So if you go on to nationalgeographic.com/voteyourmainstreet, you can do up to 5 votes a day for that particular, I think we're in the top 4 right now. So we really need everybody watching and everybody in the audience to please go online, and you can also find that link at westhollywoodpreservationalliance.org or our Facebook site. There's $2 million in funds available, and we're looking for $150,000 to restore that fantastic train car. The 1933 group is coming aboard as the operator, and they have sassafras on Vine, and they do an excellent job at night clubbing, so it's looking pretty good, so please make that vote. Also wanted to thank Faring. They have the French Marketplace plan, and they released it in WehoVille News, and the new plan pretty much preserves the French Marketplace, including the Art Deco features, the very front area, and much of the interior as well. So I think community outreach, a little bit of community outcry, and a sympathetic developer led to a beautiful result for the city and for our LGBTQ history as well. We're also happy that they're working with us to save the Herman Miller showroom, the Robertson Lane project, which is a go apparently, and also the WeHo adjacent norms will not be moved as far as I understand. So those are some wins for us in historic preservation. Also, the Charles Company, I believe, is a developer for the Crosby Building, and the Crosby Building is perhaps the most important building in West Hollywood. It's a secret, it's on Sunset, and it's the home of the invention of audio and videotape. So we'd just like to thank, once again, the development community in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Rick Watts, to be followed by Lynn, et cetera.
Good evening. Rick Watts, City of West Hollywood, Disabilities Advisory Board. Just a reminder that October is Disabilities Awareness Month, and tomorrow over at Plummer Park, for folks who haven't yet gotten your flu shot, or if you need screening for blood glucose or a number of other conditions, we have a health screening event over at Plummer Park from 10 to 1. Including free flu shots, so please come on by. And next Wednesday, here in Council Chambers, our annual Disabilities Service Awards will be presenting to Maria Shriver, among other persons. The theme this year is a prescription for progress, moving forward by giving back. Persons with disabilities have always been among us and have always contributed a lot to our society, whether it's Franklin D. Roosevelt from his wheelchair leading the nation out of depression and through the Second World War, or persons like Helen Keller or Albert Einstein that have given so much and helped society at large. The activists of the disabilities organization ADAPT that did so much, their efforts were indispensable in saving the Affordable Care Act in Washington, D.C. last month. Yesterday at the AIDS Walk, some of the most amazing people for me were not so much the runners, but the persons who did all 10K of that. I can think of one fellow by the name of Chris Hudja, who did it on prosthetics. He has an artificial leg and an artificial foot on his other leg after losing both of them in an accident. So please come by tomorrow, and also, before you leave, check out the display out in the lobby that just tells you some of the things that disabled persons continue to do for all of us.
Thank you, Rick. Lynn, et cetera, to be followed by Larry Block.
Lynn, et cetera, West Hollywood. I'm going to take a break from my rant about the John Stewart Management Company, i.e. community housing, i.e. anti-gay therapy, to talk about history as I learned from Jim Kepner and Harry Hay, two of our founder elders who actually accomplished a paradigm shift. That gays can marry and no one can usurp their final wishes is a paradigm shift. This Harvey Weinstein scandal is a long overdue, long time coming paradigm shift that I, having learned from our elders who celebrated paradigm shifts, will be celebrating for all time. There will be more paradigm shifts. Thank you.
Thank you. Larry Block, to be followed by Amanda Goodwin.
Hi, Larry Block, West Hollywood. Today I came to speak about somebody who could not be here, Jean Dobrin. Jean celebrated her 97th birthday about 7 weeks ago at Cedars-Sinai. It was touch and go for a while, but they didn't know if she would make it. But she battled her way back to rehab and is now home with round-the-clock care, probably watching us on TV. Hi, Jean. Hi, Jean. The legendary Jean Dobrin has attended more of our city council meetings than any other person in history, except for the ubiquitous John Heilman. While John Heilman spent 30 years on the dais, Jean Dobrin spent these past 30 years on this side of the public comment podium, fighting issue after issue. Jean helped to shape this city we love. She was the original activist who stood up and sued the city hall to fight a development and paved the way for activist after activist to have confidence that they too can, yes, we can sue the city, have our voice, and win. Jean's voice will live forever in these chambers. Jean probably won't be coming back to any more city council meetings, but her presence will always be felt here. She asked me to say thanks to a few people. It's not enough time to say to everybody, but she certainly wanted to thank Tracy and Brittany Benson for always being there to help, and Steve Martin for throwing her birthday party, and John Altschul for taking care of her books, and John D'Amico for your patience and driving her home at the end of the city council meetings and being a shoulder there for me when the times get tough. Man, you got a heart of gold. And Aunt Sonia Katsouris, the cleaning lady in her building, and Lauren Meister, she wants to thank you because she knows that you always cared about her. We're going to start a fund to help for Jean's care. It's not up yet. It's Jean Dobrin's in-home care. And I think we all owe you, Jean, a lot of thanks for everything you did for us.
Thank you, Larry. Amanda Goodwin, to be followed by Mickey Mars, and that's our last speaker.
Well, long time no see. And my props to Jean. She has been a force for many, many years. I have a lot to say, so I'm just going to try to get to it. The coyote situation, I completely support what everybody said. Lindsay's proposal as well. I don't know if we have a cat ordinance, but I'm really starting to think that our cats shouldn't be able to roam wild on the streets anymore. I mean, I have a tenant who has two, and it's very tenuous for neighbors who are live in fear that something's going to happen to the cats, whether they're going to be hit by cars or something like that. And, you know, we should let the raccoons focus on rats, not on cats. And the coyotes. The debris on the street, I'm calling it in every week in Tri-West. I think we should start making landlords culpable for their tenants putting debris on the parkways. I'm a landlord. I call it in all the time. There's no reason why we need refrigerators and couches and chairs sitting there and nobody making arrangements for them to be picked up. So if the tenants aren't going to do it, then the landlord should be responsible. I don't know if the homeless, by being great to the homeless, is really going to solve our homeless problem, but until we declare it a public safety threat or lack the capacity to take care of themselves. Recently in Tri-West, somebody was beat up on the 700th block by a homeless man. They were chased for 1.5 blocks at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the person was sent to the hospital. We had like 7 sheriff's cars there. We've had some other assaults in the neighborhood early morning on women walking their dogs. So I don't know what's happening in West Hollywood with the crime, but I'm not really sure what's coming from. Landlords need to lock down their properties if they're going to be sitting vacant. It's bringing people into the neighborhood. Lastly, traffic mitigation in Tri-West, please. We had a car going almost 70 miles an hour down Westmount.
Thank
Everybody
you.
talked about it. We need traffic mitigation
Your
in
time
Tri-West.
is up. Thank you. Mickey Mars is our last speaker under public comment.
Dear Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Duran, and council members, I wish to thank you for your proactive and compassionate approach to coexistence with coyotes. I'm in support of non-lethal and humane methods for all species. Coyotes are an important part of the ecosystem as they keep in balance mesocarnivores like skunks and raccoons, thereby boosting bird population. Please let's use education and kind management strategies. Let's teach people to be compassionate to the wild animals who were here centuries before our ancestors even arrived on this continent. I know that coyotes are attracted to the scent of outdoor domestic cats. So please, cat owners, keep your cats inside day and night. Let's foster coexistence by focusing on public education plus aversive conditioning for habituated coyotes. Thank you so much, and we love you, Gene.
Thank you, Mickey. And that completes public comment. We'll now move on to council member comments. You want to start? Lauren, thank you.
You're welcome, Mayor. Thursday, October 19th is the Great California Shakeout. At 10:19 a.m., we practice drop, cover, and hold on. If you'd like to participate, contact Lily Campbell, our city's emergency management coordinator. On Saturday at 1 p.m. at the WeHo Library, there'll be a guest lecture about the environmental effects of urbanization and waste management. And since our last meeting, I attended the West Side City's Council of Governments, where we started a conversation about how we can work together when it comes to building housing that is affordable, looking at it from a regional perspective. I also attended the West Hollywood Chamber Government Affairs Committee meeting, and Saturday I attended the West Basin Water Harvest Festival Awards ceremony. Yesterday we celebrated Play Ball, and thanks to staff and our Sheriff's Department for making it really such a great day for us and for the kids. On consent calendar, regarding 2H, the Metro Rail Update and Agreement for Services, I would just ask that as soon as the feasibility study is available to the public for review, that we all receive a copy of that. Item 2I, Metro Division 7 Update and Amendment to the Agreement for Services. I'd like for staff to look at the feasibility of partnering with the county on a service center for the homeless to be located somewhere on this site. The location is good because it's away from businesses, it's away from neighborhoods, it's close to the sheriff's and the West Hollywood Park, and that's where many of our homeless can be found. This should be a place where homeless people can visit a restroom, shower, do laundry, and have access to medical and psychiatric services, legal services, and case management. This is an opportunity to pilot a drop-in program as it is a temporary space. I'd like staff to look at models that I've read about recently in San Francisco, SF311.org, which is a drop-in center that provides non-shelter services, such as those that I just mentioned. And in Philadelphia, they have created a service center by their metro station. So I just want to make sure that we vet this idea as we outreach to our local businesses and residents, as well as the county. Item 2O, mobile HIV and STD testing for at-risk adults. I just want to make sure that we're including as a requirement to either distribute PrEP information or providing the text number in order to get that information. This was part of the council directive in 2015. It's not specifically mentioned in the report. I know I spoke with David Giuini. He said that that's still the case, but I just want to make sure that it's on the record. Regarding item 2P, Public Facilities Commission Off-Leash Dog Committee, I'm a little concerned about the dog committee being, getting rid of the dog committee at this point when we have the 2 dog parks opening, or the 2 areas in WeHo Park opening. But if that's the decision, then at least I think we should have a community meeting before those parks open while you're writing the rules. You might want to have a specific study session about dog parks and maybe invite some dog training professionals and get the input from dog owners and from dog training professionals about the rules for the dog park areas. On item 2T, on the bollards, this item includes temporary as well as permanent bollards, or at least that's my intention. So, for example, during Pride and Halloween, where we close off streets, we could have bollards to prevent vehicles from trying to crash into a crowd on our streets when we have the streets closed to just pedestrians, as well as permanent areas that we know are heavily trafficked with pedestrians, as was mentioned in the staff report. On item 2U, development of public infrastructure improvement, I'd just like to remind everyone that WeHo residents, businesses in our city has been paying a 25% surcharge for Beverly Hills Water, and we need to know what we've gotten for our money. 88 plus years of paying, I'm sure we've paid back their investment. Also, we need to make sure that we're maintaining our historic buildings, our city buildings, like Great Hall, Long Hall, which still have years of life left and are important historic resources. Item 2V, policies to address residential parking concerns. I appreciate the mayor bringing this forward. Over 2 years ago, Councilmember D'Amico and I brought forward an item for staff to update our residential parking codes for market rate units, and that also should include guest spaces. It hasn't happened yet, but hopefully with this item, that will be looked at as well. Since state law reduces the number of parking spaces required for affordable units, we need to ensure that our new construction, particularly units that are larger than our average size or those with 3 bedrooms, have adequate parking. Census data and our own studies show that over 80% of our households have cars. 57% of them have 1 car, 22% have 2 cars, and 4% have 3 or more cars. So we still have cars, and our residents still need parking where they live. And then item 4B, which went to consent, the status update on the new CityLine X vehicles and service brand refresh. I had a couple of suggestions on vehicles for CityLine and CityLine X and the pickup line. It would be great if we had the word "free" somewhere on the bus or van, because people don't necessarily know it's free and they may not take it, and whereas they might be more likely to take it if it was very clear that it was a free service. On the front electronic panel for the CityLine and CityLine X, we really need to have information that distinguishes when it's an X service by saying something like direct service to Hollywood and Highland via Santa Monica Boulevard and the hours, because sometimes people will get on the wrong bus and then they're taking the long way when they're on the CityLine versus the CityLine X. At all the bus stops for the CityLine service and CityLine X and pickup, it would be great to have an information panel with their respective routes and their times of their routes, and to show the actual routes. Also, and I know that this is not in the item, but I'm still going to talk about it since it's about CityLine X. I think that we may need an additional stop for CityLine X at Fuller on the south side of Santa Monica Boulevard and Green Acre on the north side of Santa Monica Boulevard, especially now that we have the Avalon Open and Trader Joe's. I think that would be a great convenience for the people who live there. And lastly, at least on Fridays, we should consider extending the City Line X hours to 8 p.m. since that's the pickup doesn't start until 8 p.m. Those are all my comments. Thank you.
And since that item is on consent, we'll just ask staff to look at your suggestions, and if they need to bring anything back to us for approval, they can do that. Other council comments, Councilmember D'Amico.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be long-winded and boring. No, I'll try to be quick. I wanted to thank staff, John Keogh and Joanna, for bringing the Metro 7 update with amendment for services with Gel Studios. Many years ago, as a council and individually, I really pushed for us to make something of the north side of Santa Monica Boulevard in front of the bus maintenance facility, and finally that's moving, and I think we have the right consultant in place to really give us some thoughtful options. And I know, Mayor, you and I sort of talked about spaces that we could activate around the city, and this is certainly one that is a long time coming and needs some activation. Item 2L, the agreement for services with M6 Consulting to add plan check services. I'm just very concerned that we just keep throwing money into this problem and we don't have the kind of production that's, in my mind, consummate with the cost of having plan check outside of the city. I don't want to overemphasize, but I have not met a single person who's happy with their work. Consultants tend to find problems to make their existence, to generate a use for their existence, and our plan check services are already extended, and so I'm just very, very, very nervous. That's 3 verys, that we're going to extend this another 6 months, and meanwhile we have hundreds, yes, hundreds of apartment units that have been in plan check for more than a year and a half. That means that they're not started construction. That means more than a year and a half ago we approved them. That means that 20% of those units are affordable and we don't have people living in them, and so we're giving money to consultants who aren't doing the job. And I'm just very concerned that we believe this is our only option. So as a community, we have been hearing, and you tell us that housing is incredibly important and you want affordable housing to be built, but we're not allowing the production of it to happen because our plan check process is broken. So I'm going to vote no on this. I'm expecting that it will pass, but I'm hoping that in the next 6 months we can fix this problem. On item 4A, which is the east side, we're talking about that. On item 4B, which is the status of the City Line X, I'm very excited about this. I would just ask when we have the artwork for the City Line prepared, if I could get it in an email just to see it before I see it on the road. I think maybe all of us as a council might like to see the artwork for that exciting and new rebranding of our City Line effort. And finally, we are going to talk about that. I also wanted to say that I didn't receive donations from any one who represents anyone with an item on tonight's agenda. Thank you, Mayor.
No. Yes.
So I had concerns about item 2L also, and because the city manager wasn't here, I was going to ask him for an update, so maybe we should table 2L, which is the agreement for services with the plan check services until until the next meeting, if that's possible.
Or maybe we can ask before we vote, because we still have other council member comments, maybe we could ask our acting city manager if he can give us an update. I was going to suggest that we definitely want an update as to how this problem with plan check and building and safety is going to get resolved. So maybe, David, if you wouldn't mind, if there's anyone here who you can check with on that issue, or maybe you know. And let's hold off on changing the agenda or pulling that until we get an update. Lindsay?
Thank you, Mayor. First, I want to thank everyone who came to speak on item 2S. I know we're talking about it later, but in case you are taking off, I want to say thank you. I also want to thank folks who came to speak on the Vagina Monologues item. 2R this year is actually the 20th anniversary of V-Day, the international organization that works to end violence against women and girls. And so I want to thank you for continuing to support this effort, as I know the whole community does. And on item 2T, I'm supportive of this item. I just want to make sure that as we're thinking about installing bollards to protect pedestrians, that we aren't creating things that impede pedestrians and create more things on our sidewalks that create obstacles, especially creating accessibility issues. So I'm sure we will take that into account as we're taking a look at this, but I just wanted to state that for the record. October is Awareness Month of a lot of issues. I know that we recognized Disabilities Awareness Month at our last meeting, but it is also Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And the city is hosting a health and wellness event at Plummer Park tomorrow from 10 to 1. As part of this event, we'll be providing resource and referral information for clinical exams, mammograms, and ultrasounds, emotional support services, and information, education, and advocacy services. We'll also provide breast self-exam shower cards in English, Russian, and Spanish, and we'll have pink lapel pins available as giveaways if you are able to attend tomorrow's event. Also, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and the city's Women's Advisory Board meeting on October 24th will host a presentation by Peace Over Violence, an organization we're very familiar with, which works to build healthy relationships in families, communities, and communities free from sexual, domestic, and interpersonal violence. And throughout the month, public safety staff is continuing to provide educational collateral from the Live, Work, Play, Be Safe campaign on domestic violence prevention and sexual assault prevention and nightclub safety. And the city will also be providing information on resource organizations through its social media outlets. But most importantly, if you or someone you know are experiencing domestic violence, you are concerned that it may be happening to you, you want to find out more information, the National Domestic Violence Hotline is 800-799-7233. And please call. Someone is available for you 24 hours a day, and we want you to get the help and support that you need. As Councilmember Meister mentioned, she did attend the West Basin meeting this weekend, and I want to congratulate her for being recognized by the West Basin Municipal Water District for her dedication and support for the Water Reliability Program. We had some good news this morning. The governor vetoed late last night SB 649, which was a proposal to establish uniform permitting process for small cell wireless equipment and fixed rates for local governments who want to charge for placement. This is a somewhat technical thing, but basically it means that cell towers can't be placed in our cities without our approval and without our input. And they tried to do that, and we stopped it. So that was really great news. We're very happy about that. And I was up in Sacramento with League of California Cities and California Contract Cities and everybody who was up there. It's great to have a win like this. I want to thank our city manager and city staff, as well as everyone who donated goods. There were collection bins in City Hall for survivors and families who are being supported in Las Vegas. And I want to thank everyone who contributed. I don't know who all you are, but I drove those goods directly to the Las Vegas Convention Center, and they were so deeply grateful that our community connected with Las Vegas in this way. So thank you for everyone who participated in that. I represented the city at the California Contract Cities recent board meeting, as well as the LA County Community Choice Energy Board meeting, which took place in Calabasas. Luckily, those are now moving to downtown LA and will be more accessible to everyone in the county. I had the pleasure of attending the naming ceremony for the Sheila Kuehl Amphitheater at Ford Theater. And if you haven't been there recently, it has been new and improved thanks to the contributions of our supervisor, and we want to congratulate her on this honor. The mayor and I received a Metro briefing, and I know we have a somewhat of that report reflected here in our agenda tonight, but we are moving forward with Metro. The feasibility studies are close to completion, and we're moving forward with everything that's happening, staying on track to be shovel-ready by 2020, which is very exciting. I participated in the AIDS Walk yesterday downtown, and was grateful to see so many of our community members make the trek to downtown Los Angeles. It's sad to not have that event here anymore, but I was heartened to see so many people continue to be keeping the community connected and make the journey down there. And it was a really wonderful event. And I want to thank everyone who participated in the Play Ball event, especially our staff and our sheriff's department. My colleagues, Councilmember D'Amico and Councilmember Meister, came out. I know the captain threw a heater to kick off the home run derby, and I want to say that I think we had something to do with the Dodgers game 2 win last night, because we had our Play Ball event yesterday afternoon. But go Dodgers. Thanks, Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you. I have just a few brief comments. I want to thank Roy Oldenkamp for highlighting the effort to raise money for the Formosa rehabilitation. Andy Lavano is going to work to make sure that we have a computer at City Hall in the lobby so that people who come in can easily vote. And also, if you have any questions about how to support the effort, Andy is here and she will help you log on. You can do it on your cell phone and vote for them tonight. Secondly, on 2T, the Bollards item, I wanted to thank Lauren for bringing this forward. But I do want to echo Lindsay's comments. We have had bollards in the past in some places, and they can be an impediment to people with disabilities, and they can also create pedestrian hazards, particularly in areas where people may be out drinking at night. So I know that we need to balance the competing safety issues, and I'm sure that's the intention. And so I hope staff will give all of those issues careful consideration. And then I wanted to make sure that we thanked everyone from the community who participated in the AIDS Walk. Scorpio is here. She also participated. Thank you. She was one of the star walkers, and thank you, Lindsay, for being there representing us. But I know that there were a lot of people from the community who have participated year after year to support the work of AIDS Project Los Angeles and other social service agencies. And then finally, we had an event this weekend at the PDC, and there were some significant noise issues. I know that our community development staff, our code enforcement, and our event staff tried to resolve those issues as quickly as possible. I apologize that that occurred. It was not a city event. And certainly the behavior that occurred was a problem for neighbors. And I know that Cleo spent a lot of time trying to resolve that and imposed additional conditions on the remainder of the event to try to reduce the impact on the community. So I want to thank you, Cleo, for your response, and also our staff and code enforcement. All right, that completes council member comments, and I'm going to turn to David Wilson, who is our acting city manager tonight. The city manager, Paul Aravallo, has been traveling out of town, and he's not quite back yet. So David, did you get an answer to the issue regarding 2L?
Yes, I did. So the contract that's on the consent calendar today for 2L is with our contractor M6 that's providing services to fill the vacancies that are currently in building and safety. So it's to maintain our regular services. Our normal plan check services is with BCA, which is a different contractor. They've been providing plan check services for years. We're actually going to do an RFP later this year to go out and find do bench contracts for those services. So, excuse me. So this item or this contract would help us to maintain our current level of services or increase our services while we're working on fixing some of the issues in building and safety. And then Paul will be here next meeting to give a more complete update on the organizational changes that he's looking at in building and safety and CDD.
So this company isn't the regular plan checking company that, in building and safety, that I think Councilmember D'Amico.
They are now. They've been providing plan check services for some of the vacant positions, but they're not the regular additional plan check services that we've had.
Mayor, it's a super complicated set of things. There's the staff, and then there's VCA, which has historically helped the staff, and then there's this additional contract, which is supplementing the staff that have not been replaced, that have either been on leave or been absent from positions. So the entire sort of mix of services is complicated, and I gave my comments about my thoughts about it, but I think, you know, if David, if what you're saying is they need this in order to continue business as usual, we need some business to happen, but business as usual is not acceptable for me at this point.
Okay. All right. So the rest of your report.
So there were a number of comments on the number of items, and I won't answer all of them or any of them tonight, but staff has taken notes, and we will be getting back to you on the various items that there's been comments on.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Thank you. So, Council, what do we want to do with 2L? I think staff has definitely heard our displeasure with the way Plan Check is working currently, but it seems like we need bodies there to do some of the work, at least for a period of time. Are we prepared to leave 2L on consent, or we want to? Okay.
If we, do we know when the contract expires?
June of 18.
I mean, the current, I mean, or this is a new contract, they're not doing anything right now? Is that?
They are doing work. They're filling some of the vacant positions, and this proposes to extend that contract till June of 2018.
And the contract goes till now. But this, right now, when does the contract go till? Before the extension? When is it?
It looks to me like there's a contract that expires in December 31st, and this is extending it into June 30th because presumably these people are filling in staff positions where the recruitment won't be complete by the end of the year.
Correct.
So,
correct.
so it wouldn't really hurt to table this till the next meeting when the city manager is here and we can have a discussion about it. Because the contract is going till December, so, I mean, that's what I would like to do.
Yes, there's currently enough money on the contract to get us through the next meeting if that's what the council wants to do.
All right, if that's what, if that's the consensus, John, are you here to add on this? No, okay. All right,
so
are you comfortable with that?
We can table it to the next meeting.
All right, so we'll go ahead and table this, but we'll act on it at the next meeting because we want to make sure that there are staff or consultants to fill those staff positions. Okay. All right, so Yvonne, you got that? By consensus of the council, we're going to table 2L for 2 weeks, or to the next council meeting, sorry. All right, and that moves us to the consent calendar. The consent calendar is a series of routine items that we approve with a single motion. Yvonne, can you give us the fiscal impact on tonight's consent calendar as it's been amended?
The fiscal impact with the addition of 4B, 5A, the tabling of 6A and 2L, and the removal of item 2S to excluded consent is $2,226,964 in expenditures, $1,250,000 in potential revenue, and $27,863 in waived fees.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? The consent calendar has now been approved. Thank you. We will now turn to, apparently, John Leonard, because he's sitting there. Item 3A, which is our only public hearing tonight, and this is a public hearing to amend our master fee resolution because apparently there was an error in the last one. And Yvonne, how was this public hearing noticed?
The public hearing notice was published in a local newspaper and posted in the city's required posting locations.
As required by law. Thank you, Yvonne. And John, are you going to give us a brief staff report?
Yes. So good evening, Mayor and council members.
Hang on a second. Are there any speakers on this item? No.
No.
Council, do we need a staff report on this? No. Okay. It's moved that we close the public hearing and adopt the staff recommendation. All those in favor, please vote. And the motion carries. Thank you. And now we'll turn to item 4A, which is the Eastside Communities Priorities Plan. And staff will be coming out. They are coming out to give us apparently a brief report because we don't have many people here, but we do have a couple of public comments. And this has been before us, but we tabled it the last time, so thank you for coming back. Who's going to give the report? Garen? Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Garen Serapian, and I'm an Associate Planner with the Long Range and Mobility Planning Division. This evening, we're thrilled to present you the Eastside Community Priorities Plan for adoption. Just some brief background. The City Council appointed 15 Eastside community stakeholders to form an Eastside working group to lead the development of a first of its kind community plan to address the most pressing issues and concerns for the East Side as recommended by the city's former East Side Task Force. The East Side Community Plan does a few things. It describes a shared community vision. It lists tools and strategies to implement that vision, and those focus on programs and actions to improve the physical, social, and economic character of the area. The plan identifies a statement of priorities for implementation, both short and long term, and also helps the city and community stakeholders prioritize those improvements and service needs, and that can be added to our annual work programs. During phase 1 of the project, the working group identified 5 priority topic areas to be included in the plan. This includes economic development, mobility, urban design and community character, public space, housing, and other topics that may come up during the meetings. Last year, in 2016 and the beginning months of this year, the Eastside Working Group met on 11 occasions to discuss the recommendations for each priority topic area that were facilitated by staff and our consultant team, Ramey and Associates. Additionally, we also held a really great walking tour with the Eastside Working Group and an Eastside community event last September at the Spalding parking lot, which was hugely successful. Over 200 attendees came over and provided really valuable feedback to be included in the plan. Here's another snapshot of that. A key component of the priorities plan is an establishment of a shared community vision for the East Side. Overall, there was a strong desire by the East Side Working Group to enhance the creative character of the East Side, ensure public safety programs are tailored to the unique needs of the East Side neighborhood, encourage urban design that matches the diverse and eclectic charm of the neighborhood, and support a range of public events tailored to the unique characteristics of our East Side community. The recommendations listed in the appendix are prioritized for the east side and organized by level of priority. Prioritization occurred over several months and were conducted by the east side working group. The plan includes the overall top 10 highest priority recommendations developed by the working group, and those top 10 priorities identified reflect priorities from each of the topic areas included in the plan. Additionally, there are 14 short-term implementation items associated with some of the recommendations. These short-term actions are subsets of recommendations, and the intent is to identify kind of focus on physical improvements that can happen in a fairly short term and can be seen by community members in a fairly short term. The recommendations and priorities are intended to be incorporated into department work programs and budgets to ensure that each recommendation in the plan are implemented. Many of the recommendations in the plan have already been incorporated in department work programs, and we'll be working to implement those items. Staff presented the draft plan in March of this year to various commissions and boards, and held 4 informal pop-up events. The community expressed their support for adoption of the plan. Finally, in terms of outreach following adoption of the plan, there will be ongoing outreach as specific recommendations are implemented. They would require their own community process, any public hearings that are required for a recommendation if required. Additionally, staff will plan on holding annual pop-up events to review the implementation of the plan and make any potential adjustments to the prioritization based on the community needs during that year. And finally, staff will provide an annual update to the City Council with respect to all key implementation items, including the progress to date, current initiatives, and future resource demands. And also, we definitely like to thank all of the Eastside Working Group members for their hard work and commitment in development of the plan. And it's a one-of-a-kind priorities plan, and it's been a real pleasure to work with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Garen. I know council members have some comments, but why don't we take the 3 public speakers first? Michael Vojtelevich, to be followed by Stephanie Harker.
Good evening, Michael Vojtelevich, East Side, West Hollywood. I really would like to be able to support staff's recommendation, but unfortunately, I can't. This is a lofty wish list, and some of the most important points have already been noted almost 30 years ago in the 1988 General Plan. Whether it's noise, infrastructure, or parks and recreation, the fact is this: the city of West Hollywood has failed. This document goes against everything, just about everything that the city has really put its energy to advance itself in the past couple of decades. And unfortunately, what has been lost is the quality of life. And without giving a sermon, I'm just going to reduce it down to one simple little thing, because October is Disability Awareness Month. And during the first iteration, as well as the most current iteration, you had Marina Berkman, a person from Jewish Family Services who supposedly helps thousands of disabled. This trash receptacle is one of the most unfriendly trash receptacles for a disabled person to use. Marina doesn't understand it, the city doesn't understand it, and I didn't see hardly any expertise in the past 15 members who sat. It became obvious on the walking tour especially when we got to Ogden, because only a few people in that group had ever walked down the 2 blocks of Ogden south of the boulevard. It's very scary when you have members like that.
Stephanie Harker, to be followed by Kathy Blavis.
Good evening, Stephanie Harker, east side of West Hollywood for 34 years last month. There were obviously many, many hours by many people that went into the East Side Community Priorities Plan, the scope of which is monumental. I am in hopes that many things in this plan can be fast-tracked, but particularly any and all public safety issues. We as a community must rid the East Side of prostitution, prevalent and growing problem of drug peddling, and the filthy streets as soon as possible if we expect high-income people to move into the 1,000 new units in 5 blocks on the East Side. A 540-square-foot apartment at Avalon Bay costs $2,950 per month. We need to clean up the physical area so people feel safe walking to and from what will be new, fun shopping restaurants and a plethora. We also have a plethora of daily petty crimes. The East Side PAC was established 24 years ago, and to my knowledge, early on, the Venerable Ruth Williams and others began asking for better lighting on the East Side. We are still waiting, so I hope that those things can be expedited. I'm excited by the possibility of support for new small businesses, retail, and restaurants on the East Side, as we lost so many in one fell swoop when the Avalon Bay project erased a shoe repair, a locksmith, a smoke shop, a tropical fish store, 4 small restaurants, a laundromat, and a dry cleaner. But we are thankful that Trader Joe's returned. On last point, page 91, regarding Plummer Park and particularly Fiesta Hall, the desire to renovate a multi-purpose performance space to capacity of 150 to 200. Right now, it holds 500 people. Let's not reduce it by half. Thank you.
Kathy Blavis.
Good evening, Kathy Blavis, east side of West Hollywood. I agree a lot with what Stephanie Harker said in terms of the people who put a lot of hard work into it. There was a lot of hard work. There were a lot of commitment from many of the people that served on that advisory board. The problem right now, it is a very lofty concept. The problem is so much about public safety. As Stephanie said, you know, we look at the Gateway, and there was a lot of promise for the Gateway. There was a lot of promise for the Dillon and the Huxley. There's a lot of crime there. And I think a lot of people are looking at this thinking, you know, how are we going to accomplish all this if people are afraid? You know, I've lived here 20-something years, and for the first time since I've lived here, I'm afraid of walking around after dark. So again, I am excited about a lot of these ideas and these concepts. I just think we have to put such an emphasis on public safety. There was a mobile command center that was paraded out. I've never seen it since. So we have to really keep that in mind. The other thing that I noticed was about the historic walking tour. My fear is that after the commercial historic survey was completed, nothing's come before us to be nominated. My fear is that when we talk about the charm and the diversity and all of these things in the storefronts, is that we might lose them. So I think we have to put that in the forefront as well. Again, I commend staff, I commend the members of the community that put in the time and the effort, and I'm not against this plan, I just hope we can actually put it to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's our last public speaker. I believe that at least one more of the working group members is here. And Lindsay, we do have a commendation for you. Lindsay, do you want to present it?
Katie Sears, would you like to come forward?
Thank you, Katie. We're glad you were able to join us. Council discussion. Who wants to start? Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem Duran.
Thank you,
You
Mayor.
grab the mic.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to first start by thanking the members of the East Side community group that worked so hard and diligently on this particular plan over the many months, and thank staff for all of their hard work as well. I'm generally supportive of everything that's been presented here tonight in terms of the short-term and long-term mobility, urban design, public spaces, and housing. The one place where I think we've missed the mark is on economic development, and that's actually the issue that concerns me, I think, the most. The east side of West Hollywood is a border with neighboring Hollywood, and I think that a lot of the less desirable parts of Hollywood spill over La Brea into the city of West Hollywood, and that a lot of the impacts that the east side is currently experiencing are generated from east of La Brea. And so I agree with the speakers who spoke tonight about making public safety a priority to address those issues. But the unique thing about the east side of West Hollywood is it's the one section of town where it's one major street, Santa Monica Boulevard, with just the thinnest amount of residents on either side. It's unlike the Center City, which stretches all the way from Sunset past Santa Monica Boulevard. It's unlike the West End, which of course goes all the way from Sunset down to Beverly. And so it is a very challenging area, in fact, because of how linear it is with one main street. Historically, that main street has served our Russian-speaking population. But as we've watched the demographic changes over the last 20 plus years, we know that the percentage of Russian-speaking residents has dwindled from 30% down to 20, down to 13, to single digit today. And so a lot of the economic activity on that part of Santa Monica Boulevard has been about serving that particular community. Now, there's one of two ways to look at this. Just let the market be the market, and the market forces will eventually react. When the Russian-speaking businesses don't have enough customers, they'll either have to evolve and begin catering to English-speaking populations and change their business model, or they'll go the way of the different light bookstore and Tower Records. They'll become obsolete, and the market forces will eventually put them out of business, leaving vacant storefronts. You know, at the same time we have that going on, we have an influx primarily of young women, young professional women moving into the east side of West Hollywood who are paying market rents, and as I think Ms. Blavis or Harker both said, are expecting to have a safe neighborhood. But I think the biggest challenge we have there is we don't have the benefit of wide sidewalks like we do on the western end. The reason we enjoy wide sidewalks on the western end of Santa Monica is because we did away with the grassy median that used to hold the old rail tracks along Santa Monica Boulevard. We got rid of it so we could expand the size of the sidewalks. We don't have the ability to do that on the east end of Santa Monica Boulevard. So we're left with very thin sidewalks. And that means excluding a lot of outdoor cafes or outdoor patios or outdoor dining that people enjoy on Sunset or the western end of Santa Monica Boulevard. So it really limits the type of business model that might be available on the eastern end of town due to the way in which Santa Monica Boulevard is linear. It's small sidewalks with residential apartments adjacent to our main street. So it has some logistical challenges in terms of the economic development. So I think what I'm hoping for, maybe this is the start of it, is whether we as a community just decide to let the markets be the markets, and with market savagery, it will result in bankruptcies, empty storefronts until some new entrepreneur comes up with an idea to serve the eastern end of West Hollywood, or whether we wish to work with Maribel Louie, Economic Development Chamber, and others to look at the limitations and restrictions that we have in terms of the urban design of the eastern end of Santa Monica Boulevard, and figure out if we can't do outdoor cafes and outdoor dining and some of the other models that the western end enjoys, what instead would we want to attract, and what changes do we need to make possibly to zoning or ordinances or the types of businesses that we would attract to that end. Either way has pluses and minuses, but I think I'd like to spend a little time looking at it, analyzing it, rather than just letting the market forces react, because I think there are such predicaments on the eastern end of Santa Monica Boulevard that it could result in melees and stifled economic development on the east side without a more aggressive form of visioning about what we could possibly have on the eastern end. So I didn't get that completely in this document tonight, and I don't even know if it's possible to do that, but I'd sure be interested in hearing from Ms. Louie, maybe privately, or Chamber of Commerce or others, about future economic development given the limitations that we have on eastern Santa Monica Boulevard. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Meister.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Mayor Pro Tem said. I probably won't say it as eloquently, but several things on my list are checked off here. One, of course, the priority being, to stress the public safety aspect of the plan and public health. I think we really have to have regular cleaning of street furniture at the bus shelters, of the sidewalks, and street cleaning and better lighting, and move forward with the crosswalks that we've, that the East Side has wanted for years, and we obviously need. I think we need a streetscape plan for Santa Monica Boulevard. I don't know when the last streetscape plan was, but I think that goes along with what Mayor Pro Tem Duran is saying, that there needs to be some kind of look, and it needs to be upgraded, and to have that kind of space for the small businesses to make it a welcoming place. I think we need to seize every opportunity for green space and pocket parks that we can there. I think we need to look at design standards, and that goes for commercial as well as residential. I would like to see us, as a council, commit to lower scale development. I think we've had our share of big development there on the east side. We have, over 1,000 new units. They're not rented. They haven't brought workforce housing or middle income. They're holding their rents. They haven't brought in commercial. Many of the commercial spaces on the ground floor of those new projects are still empty, even though it's been over 2 years. And I think that was a promise that they made to the city, and they have not kept to their promises there. I also agree that we need to work on small business development, and I know that the Economic Development Department is looking at parking requirements and those types of things, but whatever we can do to stimulate small business, that the existing small business or new small businesses that come in to, again, activate the street and be there to serve all these new residents and all the old residents. And then my last point is, Hayworth is inside of this boundary. It's on the west side boundary of the east side, and I don't really understand why Hayworth is. I think it had something to do with redevelopment and the redevelopment agency, but we don't have that anymore. So I'm wondering if maybe we should consider making the west side boundary of the east side Fairfax. It just seems a logical place for me if council wants to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember D'Amico.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a point of clarification before I speak. So we're adopting this resolution, and in this resolution are a series of top 10 recommendations, and so we're adopting those recommendations. They're numbered, so allegedly in that order, right? And then the top 10 short-term implementation actions also in that order. So is that everyone's expectation? I just want to make sure that are we giving staff the direction, yes, you should move on these things, and you have the resources and dollars and wherewithal to do it?
Bianca.
Sure. So let me clarify. The plan is a statement of priorities by the members of the East Side Working Group. As a statement of priorities, it doesn't necessarily commit city resources to implement those things in the order identified, but could be used for work plan prioritization purposes as we move forward with future budgets. Many of these things are already in the process of being implemented in various forms, and some of the recommendations here may help refocus some of those efforts. Some of them represent new items.
So this is not a statement of priorities by the City Council. It's a statement of priorities by the East Side Working Group. So this is just their voice saying this is what we want as a community and how they've ordered it. It doesn't necessarily translate into that's the order or the priority that the City Council will ultimately fund as we go through the process. It's just saying that here's what the people in the working group felt was the priority for their neighborhood. And then as the various departments look at their work programs as a budget, we can use this to say, okay, we're going to tackle this item. And then ultimately it's the council's choice to say, yes, we'll fund that item in the future, or we're not going to fund that item. But this document isn't something that the council is approving and saying this is now the work plan. This is just the priorities of the community as presented to the council, saying this is what we want.
So just to follow up on that, if we approve the resolution, we're essentially accepting the East Side Working Group's plan that you've worked with them to develop, and then this plan will be used going forward to help staff and the council prioritize work on the East Side. But we're not necessarily saying, this is the order, or go do this right today, because some of these will take a longer period of time. Some of them are more short-term. Does that help?
It does. I think it's both opens up the door, or whatever the metaphor might be. But I guess I'm left wondering then what happens next, and I guess maybe that can be we can meet offline, and I can get sort of an update on those items, because I think we all have individual, and I think as a council, interests in things moving forward. As you have said, many are already happening, and they coincidentally align with the priorities of the East Side PAC. So I guess I would merely say that as a habit of moving forward, if we did the short-term implementation actions in descending order of priority, even, because I think they're all of them, all 10 of them are quite evocative, and I think could make an immediate impact on the East Side. So I would encourage us as a council, if we haven't spoke, or if we wanted to say so, to say that those top 10 items should be pursued. And I think we'd be doing two things. We'd be improving the East Side, maybe three things, showing the East Side Working Group that we see them, we understand their priorities, we get what they're trying to get, and then have individual impacts that I think begin to actually address. I wanted to sort of now switch to my comments, and I only have two, address the questions of economic development. I think the parklets have the opportunity to begin to do that by widening the sidewalk, allowing for a place for someone to park, a restaurant to expand into the public right-of-way, and the sidewalk to move sort of where there are one or two parking spots. Now, that business owner would have to agree that the loss of 2 parking spots in front of their business is worth the gain of 7 or 8 tables in front of their business. It's a game that they would have to play with themselves. But I think that's the kind of economic development I would see, that's economic development with a small e and a small d, that really looks at a microsite as opposed to a sort of overlay that suddenly, slam, we're going to have 2 layers of trees, or slam, we have to get rid of all parking to have wider sidewalks, that in fact some small business that had an actual interest in an outdoor cafe could work with the city to develop a possible walk around, literally, past their business in a public parklet. And the second thing, which really goes to for me, I think this is a brilliant document. Go get yourself a really great job. Oh, wait, you already have one. I mean, it's really a terrific document. But I think, unfortunately, what colors almost everything that happens on the east side today is public safety. And we have to really continue to work on the traffic on Fountain, and we have to really continue to work on the safety of the east side. And I know that Councilmember Horvath is going to speak next. We haven't spoken about this, but we have spoken in the past about representation of the Sheriff's Department on the east side. I still think that that's an important idea, whether that happens with a brick and mortar presence or vehicular presence or bicycle presence or foot patrol presence. I think that the captain and the sheriff's station and our director of public safety have a mountain to climb, but we need to give them the tools to start climbing it. I think it is an actual fact that seeing a building that has $3,000 one-bedroom apartments look unsafe at the street level is a curious thing that is not that common in Los Angeles County. And I think our city hasn't actually had much experience with that. So I think we need to figure out where the buoyancy is of our public safety versus our public use of the public right-of-way, which I think can coexist comfortably. But I don't think we're there yet. I think the east side deserves additional attention, however we can give it. But again, I want to say congratulations. This is really a brilliant, really brilliant. It's so thoughtful, and I think it really does look at the microeconomies and microclimates on the east side. And I would hope that our public safety can continue to deliver and improve in that area. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Horvath.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank the East Side Working Group and all of the members of the community who participated in this discussion. It truly is a community priorities plan, and I think as we sort of had the back and forth, we really understand that this is a way to put into the record, as they say, the wishes of the members of the community who represent and who live on the East Side, stakeholders who are, vested in what that community has looked like and will continue to look like. And I think it's very important, as we move forward, we think back to conversations we had in the past. I think somebody said this, or I think this is what we heard, but now we have a document that says this is what the community came up with. And I think that's an important thing to have as we make those choices moving forward and determine our priorities. I think it also is reflective of community in that things like asking for more community-oriented events and the different identities be reflected and characterized and memorialized in some ways. I think that's very telling that we're celebrating people first, and I think that's a very important part of what happens on the East Side and making community. But I do want to highlight just a couple of things that I saw in the report, and then on page 31, not to belabor the point, but I think for the past couple of meetings we've talked about a historic resources survey of R1 zones, and I see it here again in 3.6, and I think we dealt with that at the last meeting, so I just want to make sure that we dealt with it at the last meeting and this isn't undoing what we did at the last meeting.
Yeah, that's correct. So again, this was the voice of the community. The items come before the council,
right,
and the council's taken action on that item, and so that's been moved off. So while it still is reflective of what the community might have said in the past, it's not the action that the council has given direction for us today.
Okay. And then on page 55, there's been many years of discussion about the aging in place unit transfer requests. Is that a program, can you help me understand, is that a program that is moving forward in some capacity yet, or is it still an item that's on a wish list?
I'd have to get an update from housing staff to confirm for sure, but I believe that is on a work plan.
It's on the work plan?
I believe so. I need to
Okay.
confirm.
And then finally, on page 69, I'm glad to see that discussion of Fountain Avenue pedestrian enhancements is here. I think, as I've expressed before, I think there need to be even more improvements to Fountain. Particularly, I think the intersections at Poinsettia, the northern part of the intersection that goes into Los Angeles, needs a signal that coordinates with the rest of the intersection. I think we need left turn lanes and left turn signals at the intersection of Fairfax with Fountain heading north and south. Those two intersections in particular will really help keep traffic moving in a more coordinated fashion and help to address some of the pedestrian and bicycle incidents that have happened at those intersections in particular. I think there's been mention certainly of some of the public safety issues. We did have a mobile command center. We got a commitment from this city manager that there would be a dedicated office, not a full-blown substation, but an office for public safety personnel on the east side in that building across from Plummer Park. I think that needs to happen. It needs a real timeline. And as Councilmember D'Amico said, if we need to bring it back as a report to make that happen officially, I'm sure we would be willing to do that. But we've had that conversation several times, so I think it just needs to happen. And finally, because I live in an area like this, border streets, I think we need to have a more coordinated approach to how we deal with streets that are the actual borders between West Hollywood and another city. A lot of times there's no communication. I have, LEDWP out literally in front of my building at 7 a.m. because they're allowed to be in Los Angeles. And then I have neighbors asking me how that happens. So I know these things happen on the east side as well, whether it's public safety coordination, whether it's road repair coordination, all those types of things. I think we need to have a more coordinated approach to how we deal with the city of Los Angeles and making sure that we have the relationships in place and know who to contact, so that way as there are issues that arise on the east side, whether they're development related, public safety, whatever they may be, that we know how to work together because that's LAPD's jurisdiction, or that's LADWP, or whatever the answer might be on the phone isn't good enough for a West Hollywood resident. I think we need to make sure that we're, coordinating those services and being able to support our residents and our stakeholders as best we can.
Thank you. I too want to thank our staff and the consultants and all of the members of the working group, as well as all of their predecessors and the members of the community who came forward to participate in this plan. One suggestion I want to make, and I'm going to see if this is consistent with my colleagues. It seems like one of the concerns is how do we make sure that we actually move forward with implementation. It might be a good idea for us, if we approve this tonight, to also suggest to staff that we get an annual update as part of the budget process, so that we can make sure that we're continuing to invest resources as part of the budget process, and that could just be automatically incorporated into the budget process. How are we on the implementation? The second suggestion I have, and this is kind of the problem when you put planners in charge, and no offense to you, it all becomes about planning and design. So I think part of the reaction we're having is when you read the report, there are actually 12 pages on planning and design issues, and they're all very thoughtful and good. There are 3 pages on public safety. The number one priority for the residents, and we've heard it repeatedly, and it's reflected here, is public safety. So one of the things that I would like to suggest is that we direct our public safety staff to maybe create an addendum to this, which would be a public safety plan, expanding on what is in the plan itself, but adding additional detail and adding timelines for implementation of some of the things that they've already talked about. I know that will be some additional work, but I think that will maybe go a long way to making sure the East Side understands that we understand that priority and that it gets into more detail so that we can make sure it happens. I do have a couple of other sort of minor issues with respect to the plan. If you can take a look on page, I believe it's page 89. You have this beautiful example of a parklet, a photograph on the beginning of section 8. And I guess I just want to reflect that we had a parklet program in the city, and when it came back, it was really more arts-oriented and less like this. So these are the kind of parklets that I think we were talking about when we initiated that item, when that item was initiated.
If I could clarify,
Sure.
the micro parks that have been installed, you're right, are a little bit more arts oriented. We'll be coming back to you before, that was an initial program to get started. We'll come back to you, I believe, before the end of the year with the framework for the actual parklet program for the parklets that look like this. There was a two-step process there.
Okay, and these is the intention that these would be permanent or that these would also be temporary and could move around?
I think the idea for the on-street parklets essentially would be that they're long-term temporary. They could be removed, they're not permanently fixed to the ground, but that they would be intended to be in place for several years.
Okay, because traveling, I've seen them do these kind of installations in the summer months, and then, you know, every street, it moves around from year to year, and so everyone gets to participate. And as somebody said, these are also sometimes a boon to small businesses because people can use it to have their cup of coffee or their pastry or whatever it is they're having. Okay. On page 62, and this is just another, I guess, a pet peeve of mine, looking forward, there's a reference here about something we all support, less reliance on automobiles, greater emphasis on walking, cycling, transit use. But in that paragraph, it says, you know, greater emphasis on walking, cycling, transit use, and new and innovative transportation solutions such as Uber and Lyft. That's not getting us away from automobiles. Those are just automobiles owned by somebody else. And I say this because I think sometimes our parking and community development staff have this idea that Uber and Lyft are going to get rid of the need for roads and they're going to get rid of the need for parking spaces, like everyone is just going to get beamed in. So I just wanted to make that kind of snide comment. And then finally, in the section on incentivizing renovation of older commercial buildings, and I think we all share the desire to save what's best about the city, but I think we need to be very thoughtful about it and do it in a thoughtful and intentional way. There are buildings that we definitely want to incentivize their rehabilitation and their retention, but there are also some buildings that don't have parking, they're not attractive, and we don't want to unwittingly incentivize the retention of buildings that, from an economic development standpoint and a business standpoint, would be better replaced with buildings that actually could accommodate new businesses that would serve the community. And I think we could probably all think of buildings right now that don't serve the community, the use is more industrial oriented, and you know, at some point those buildings we'd be better off without those businesses and those buildings and have them replaced. So I want to make sure we're balanced in this and don't have unintended consequences. So it looks like Mayor Pro Tem
But I
wants
move
to motion.
to adopt the resolution with the additional direction given by council.
Okay, is that sufficient guidance for you? Everyone's clear on that? And that would include incorporating the annual update or the budgetary update and directing staff for a public safety plan. Okay? Motion seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor, please vote. And it is approved. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time. Council, we have 3 more items. Do you want us to just power through? Okay. 2-minute break, because it'll take staff a few minutes to get present here to do 4C, and I believe there is a presentation that you're going to have to switch over, and that will allow Lauren a short break. Is that Abby? Hello, long time no see. Good to see you. Not Abby Land, Abby Arnold.
I take your seat? Sorry, that's my.
All right. We are ready. And council, do we need an extensive report? Or I know some of this is, some of our consultants and staff have been waiting. So if we could have a brief report and just get into the questions. We do have one public speaker.
So good evening, Mayor Howman and Council. I'm David Juney, the manager of the Social Services Division, and I'm joined by Corey Plank, the project manager for the city's homeless initiative, and the consultants that assisted us with that process, Kim Murtaugh and Abby Arnold. So just very quickly to bring us up to speed, what you're going to receive tonight is a report on the homeless needs assessment and the demographic survey data analysis. This was a direction from Council from March of 2016. Council directed staff to coordinate a homeless needs assessment to provide community-based information on the needs, characteristics, and conditions facing individuals homeless in West Hollywood. The assessment was to include a comparison of the VI SPDAT with other survey tools in use currently on the street, and also, if possible, was to conduct a specialized needs assessment in West Hollywood. The goal of the analysis is to improve the information available to West Hollywood service providers and city staff in designing and implementing services that will help people move from the streets to permanent supportive housing. The tools that Abby compared did include the VI SPDAT, the Next Step tool for homeless youth, which is a youth version of the VI SPDAT, the Downtown Women's Center survey, LAHSA's annual homeless count survey, and the LAHSA annual demographic survey. The Human Services Commission received that analysis at their meeting in January 2017. The analysis of those tools is your attachment to this report. And with their input, Commission's input, staff, along with Abby, entered into discussions with LAHSA about administering their demographic survey in West Hollywood, which had not been done previously. During these discussions with LAHSA, staff successfully advocated for permission from LAHSA to have our contracted providers utilize their demographic survey to collect data from homeless community members. 2, to include the additional answer prompt related to sex work. And 3, to conduct our own analysis of the West Hollywood specific data. The demographic survey requires engagement of homeless individuals for a period of 30 to 45 minutes, and the participants receive an incentive at the completion of the survey. Our outreach workers from our contracted social services agencies, including Essentia, Step Up on Second, and the Los Angeles LGBT Center, were asked to administer the surveys. They were trained by LAHSA staff, and they were given the survey tools and incentives. They were successful in completing 44 surveys, which were collected from all 8 of West Hollywood's census tracts. I'm going to turn it over to Kim Murtaugh, who is going to discuss the analysis of the data that we received from those surveys, the analysis of the West Hollywood participants as compared to LA County's continuum of care participants. There we go.
Great, thank you so much. Good evening, Council. My name is Kimberly Ling Murtaugh from Murtaugh & Associates, and I want to thank you for having me here today to present the findings from the 2017 Homeless Count Demographic Survey. As David said, there were 44 surveys done here in West Hollywood. Compared to the LA Continuum of Care had 4,996 surveys. So due to the limitations of sample size, comparisons that I'm talking about today don't indicate tests of significance, but are merely comparisons to show the differences between the city of West Hollywood compared to LACOC. So in terms of demographics, the respondents in West Hollywood tend to skew younger compared to LACOC. The average age was 40.64 years. There were higher rates of white and multiracial respondents. There were higher rates of transgender, male to female, and lower respondents, and lower rates of cisgender female respondents. The city wanted to recognize that transgender is not a gender. This term is used to mirror the language that was used in the larger survey. Fewer straight respondents and more lesbian, gay, and bisexual lesbian respondents were in West Hollywood compared to LACOC. In terms of veterans, 3 of the 44 respondents reported some veteran service, and of those 3, only 1 identified as straight. The survey further asked about health conditions, and West Hollywood has a higher prevalence of several health conditions, most notably HIV and AIDS-related illness. They're 18.2% of the respondents in West Hollywood compared to 1.6% in LACOC. West Hollywood respondents also reported high levels of lifetime experience with domestic violence and intimate partner violence or abuse. In West Hollywood, 38.6% of the respondents had experienced at least one form of violence or abuse. And of them, 58.8% had experienced multiple forms of violence or abuse. In terms of legal system involvement, 68.2% of respondents had some involvement with legal systems, slightly higher than LACOC. And 28 West Hollywood respondents had been in jail or prison over their lifetime. 28.6% were released as an AB 109 probationer, and 10.7%, 3 respondents, were released under Prop 47. In terms of the issue of chronic homelessness and causes of homelessness, West Hollywood respondents reported higher rates of being chronically homeless, and that's developed from the HUD federal definition, which is there at the bottom, which is an unaccompanied homeless individual with a disabling condition who has been continuously homeless for a year or more, or an unaccompanied individual with a disabling condition who has had at least 4 episodes of homelessness in the past 3 years. And those disabling conditions may be physical, mental illness, a variety of conditions. Further, the West Hollywood homeless population has been in LA County on average for less time compared to LACOC respondents. And the top 4 reasons respondents gave for being homeless were unemployment or financial reasons, conflicts with family or household members, problematic drug or alcohol use, or medical, physical disability or illness. Finally, in the summary of findings, in terms of accessing basic services and their finances, in West Hollywood, 27.3 respondents reported difficulty accessing, they were asked about 4 basic services: shower, restroom, storage facility for their belongings, and food and water. 27.3 respondents reported difficulty accessing all 4. In terms of the financial picture of homeless respondents, 64.9% of respondents reported being unemployed. 38.1% reported experiencing barriers to employment. The most frequently reported were unable to be interviewed, needing a social security card or birth certificate, no accesses to services to connect to jobs, or they lack experience. 63.6% of respondents reported making money from other sources that included panhandling, recycling, sex work, or busking street performance. 68.2% of respondents in West Hollywood reported receiving some form of government assistance, and the 2 most frequent were food stamps, or EBT, or general relief or assistance. So I'm happy to answer any questions before turning it over to David for next steps.
David? Oh, you had a question?
I just have a quick question. So the 44 completed surveys, were they from all 8 census tracts or just 3? I was a little confused.
I believe they were collected in all 8.
They were collected in all 8 census tracts.
Okay, and then what was the average age again of the COC? I know ours was 40.
Yeah, so the way the COC reports the data, they don't make it identifiable. So we have the birth years. They only report it in chunks, age chunks. So if you look at the distributions, I don't want to get too technical, but the 2 distributions of the data, West Hollywood skews younger compared to LACOC, but we don't have the actual birth years to know their average age.
We just know it's over 40, the average.
It's higher than ours.
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Okay, David.
And just further with the census tracts, Councilmember Meister, LASA does random selection of what census tracts they will administer the demographic survey. Sure enough, this time, 2017, they chose 3 West Hollywood census tracts. So their teams went out first and gathered 5 surveys. Once we had our folks trained, they went out to all 8, including those 3, and were much more successful in getting the 44. So then we just wanted to review the next steps that staff put forward with the consultants for moving forward with the data. We will be taking the survey data analysis to the Homeless Collaborative. Actually, we're taking that this Wednesday. The Homeless Collaborative meets, and so that is a meeting of city staff, our street outreach workers, park staff, sheriffs, and block-by-block ambassadors. We will present this information to them to get their input and feedback. Hopefully this will help inform their work in connecting with homeless community members. The sheriffs, as you know, will continue their homeless outreach operations. They just conducted one last Wednesday, I believe, Corey. Those will continue. That's in partnership with social services and mental health providers. The Social Services Division, in addition, as you saw, we had a higher prevalence of community members who had some history with the legal system. So we have been in talk through our contracts with Tarzana Treatment Center and with a Safe Refuge, which is a treatment center out of Long Beach. They all have reentry programs. So we have been talking to them to make sure that that process is as efficient as possible. There is funding outside of West Hollywood dollars for folks who, if it's included in their parole requirement that they need to be in treatment, there is funding for that. And if there are other folks that fall out, we, as you know, through our contracts, we can assist with that funding.
Mayor Pro Tem has a question.
I have a question about the survey. Are there crosstabs available for the different criteria? Sometimes with surveys, we could crosstab the number of LGBT that are also addicted to drugs, that are also reporting family conflicts. Are there crosstabs?
We did do some analysis at that level, but with the low number of survey respondents, it's a little bit difficult. There were some classifications that we could do that on, and I'd be happy to share that information with you.
All right, thank you.
So continuing with next steps, the city will join with neighboring municipalities and the LA County Department of Health Services in advocating for stronger guidelines for initiating involuntary holds. So
Just to clarify on that, it sounds, the way you're phrasing it, I think we want easier opportunities for us to have involuntary holds placed on people.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. So currently, we've had conversations with staff of Housing Works, which are currently working with DMH and talking about what the requirements are, what the procedure is to place someone on an involuntary hold, and how that can be strengthened. The Social Services Division, along with our Communications Department, will continue to collaborate, taking this information, which will assist in informing the city's efforts to educate the community about homelessness and related issues. We once again will participate in the countywide annual homeless count next year, 2018, and we will also, moving forward, we will continue to conduct the LAHSA demographic survey in order to continue providing more specific picture of the characteristics and needs of people who are homeless in West Hollywood. The ongoing participation in LAHSA's survey, the demographic survey, continues to inform services and training opportunities provided by and for the city's homeless services outreach teams. And finally, the city will advocate with the county, state, and federal government to provide the resources needed for an adequate supply of housing options and funding increases to adequately provide for the intensive services necessary to move folks off the street and to maintain their housing. So we welcome any questions or direction.
I'm going to take the public speakers, but thank you and thank the consultants for their work. We know that this is not a large number of respondents, but it does provide us with additional information that will help us as we develop services. It also helps our providers as they try to serve the population who are homeless in West Hollywood. Lynn, et cetera, to be followed by Michael Voshtilevich. And those are our only two speakers on this item.
I hope I'm okay, because I'm just learning the ropes, to do a brief off-topic. Having lived in the East Side for 34 years, the only thing I've ever wanted is an outdoor swimming pool, and I like the idea of a sheriff substation. On the subject of homelessness, I recently, for a year, delivered flowers part-time, and all over Southern California, everywhere are thousands and thousands of homeless people. I think one of the most amazing experiences I experienced was between the 91 freeway going down the 57 freeway to the 22 freeway near the Angels baseball stadium. Hundreds of homeless people along the bank of one of the rivers or washes or whatever. And I think the main thing to understand, because I'm kind of emphatic, people tell me, emphatic, I don't know what the word is, but is that the homeless people in West Hollywood, a great deal of them are gay people. And your idea, what you were talking about earlier of a place where they could go and get services is brilliant. You know, it's what's needed to separate them, to keep them separated from, you know, being pushed to Hollywood where it's a different type of people, you know, a lot of them into drugs. So I hope that, you know, somehow because I see them, and a great deal of them are gay people. So, you know, that we could help gay people who are homeless, especially people who come here from out of state. Thank you.
Michael Voshilevich, to be followed by Kathy Blavis.
Good evening again, Michael Voshilevich, East Side, West Hollywood. 4 walls and a roof are not sufficient to ensure that the people who live in our buildings will flourish. That quote is from Robin Connerly, who is the executive director for the Housing Corp, who requires 3 years of recent rental experience or rental, forget the word, in order to be considered to be housed. So one might want to pause and really consider what is sufficient to make sure that those who are not housed, who choose to live, sometimes who choose to live, there are others who are forced to live on the streets, actually require. On the western boundary of the east side of West Hollywood is Fairfax, and a few blocks south of Santa Monica Boulevard is the Janet Witkin project that houses formerly homeless people. One would have thought that this survey would have outreached to talk to those people, to see what it takes to successfully transition from the street to being housed. Lastly, because I've talked about this in other venues, most recently at the county, the Aging in Place report deliberately omitted including somebody who is homeless. Homeless are aging in place. I was very pleased for the 4th day in a row to see Steve, the elderly man who has the flowers in his grocery cart. He's returned back to West Hollywood after being forced out because of public safety issues. Thank you.
Kathy Blavis, and that's our last speaker.
I feel very short. Good evening, Kathy Blavis. The kind of not flip side, but the other side of this is how we as the community can help. You know, I've been here, as I said before, over 20 years, and I came here from New York City where I befriended any number of the homeless people in my neighborhood. Gave them clothing, gave them food. That's what I could do. I couldn't give them shelter. That's what I used to do here in West Hollywood until a conversation with one of the sheriffs said the reason so many homeless people are here in West Hollywood is you're all too generous. So there's this dilemma that we face as the public. Just recently I saw a homeless gentleman in front of Whole Foods on the east side. And he stopped me and asked for some money. And this was right after the crazy homeless person went after the guy at the 7-Eleven with an axe. So my personality is, oh, here. But I actually lied to him. I said I didn't have any money on me. And then I started feeling really guilty, so I chatted him up and I asked him about himself. And I said, what can we do? What can the citizens, what can the city of West Hollywood do? Because we care. Obviously we care. And he said, I just want something to eat and a place to shower and wash my clothes. And Councilmember Meister, I think you mentioned earlier about different things that they're doing in other cities. Our biggest dilemma is we don't have space. Where would we have a portable shower? I'm suggesting also, you know, near the sheriff's station, because the homeless guy said to me, because I said, no offense, but people are afraid it'll bring an influx. He said, you know what? You do flea markets and farmers markets once a week or once a month, and people don't hang out waiting for it. They go away, they know when it's going to happen, and they come back. So hopefully we can do something, and thank you for this study.
Thank you. Council comments or questions? Councilmember Meister?
I have some comments, and thank you for bringing this forward. And I'm really excited that it was done, completed, and we have these results, and I think that they will be very helpful. I think what I found most interesting were these parts, that the conditions reported by the surveyor observation that 2/3 of respondents in WeHo had signs or symptoms of one or more of the following conditions: mental illness, alcohol or drug abuse, and or serious physical health conditions. Legal system involvement, that nearly 64% of WeHo of these respondents reported a history of incarceration. And I wonder if we have a sense of how much Prop 47 has had to do with this, or it's kind of like a chicken and an egg situation. We don't know which came first, homeless and then incarceration, or incarceration and then homelessness. So that would be something to pursue, when we study this further. The chronic homelessness, that over half say that they, meet the definition of chronically homeless 1 year or more. And then the access to basic services, that a large majority, at least 70%, reported difficulty accessing at least one service. I think showers was it like 69%, something like that. So from that, I think the steps that you've provided are great, and I would just add a couple of things. The fact that we do this every year so that we track our progress, we track the changes. I think it's very important to continue this assessment. I also think that Michael's idea of talking to some formerly homeless people is actually really smart, and because they will be able to tell you what the trigger was that really got them to go for help. And I think that's something that, that's a learning that will be, that in market research, we would be looking for that. I would also suggest that if we can try to get to a number of 50, I know we were really close at 44, but 50 or over is just a really good sample to have, especially when it's about, that would be about 45% of our population based on our count, although we, probably we have more than that, but of the homeless count that we had, I think we had 105, and so, getting as close to 45 to 50% of that would be great. Based on those items that I highlighted, I think first of all, our sheriff's involvement needs to be even more prominent. Although I think that we need to come from a place of compassion. I think it's necessary. This information validates what our community has been talking about, especially this last year, that we've seen, more aggressive behavior. And I think that we have to be proactive about it and act appropriately, and that's going to involve the sheriffs. And as I mentioned, I believe at the last meeting, that we need to look at our codes and our laws and try to strengthen those, and if there are loopholes in our codes and our laws, we need to close them, and if our state laws have loopholes, then we need to lobby to close them. We need to look at other cities, not only in Southern California, but around the country, to learn from their success stories and avoid the pitfalls of programs that didn't work for them. We need to educate our residents and businesses, which we've been doing, and it's great that we're rolling out the donation meters. I'm very excited about that. We're going to have 5 donation meters coming out soon. Corey can let us know when those will be rolling out. And also we'll have the education campaign, and I think it's very important that the creative team for the education campaign, which hasn't been finalized yet, that they take a look at these results as well, because this campaign can't be like our water campaign. This is it's really got to be focused, and it's got to be very serious. One thing we learned from the Homeless Initiative Summit that the mayor and I went to, that was hosted by the county, is that when a homeless person is sent to county jail, they need to be flagged as homeless. And that's really important that our sheriffs do that and follow through on that, because what happens is then these homeless people will be assessed for medical medical and psychiatric assessment to see if they need medication or detox. And, you know, the county is going to be raising hundreds of millions of dollars from the sales tax, and they will have the money and the resources, you know, to help those people that end up in county jail. So, so it's very important that the sheriffs do that because we're not set up or equipped to help chronic homeless, but the county should be with the new programs they're putting forward. As I mentioned earlier tonight, I think we should partner with the county to utilize a portion of the metro site for a drop-in center to provide non-shelter services and use it as a means of contact, first contact, to provide access to psychiatric medical services and information on shelters, detox, et cetera. Now, my understanding from the report is that when someone agrees to get help, we give them a TAP card. Is that right? To go to wherever it is that they're getting help. I think I read that somewhere, and I have concerns about that. I just have this feeling like someone's going to get the TAP card and they either sell it or, you know, that they don't necessarily. Do we track that, who we give TAP cards to, and if they make it to wherever it is they're supposed to be going?
And that's one of a few different options that we offer for transportation. For the our treatment centers, they'll provide transportation. They will transport folks from West Hollywood to their locations. So that's one of, we can do, the other street teams do have the capacity also to, essentially has the capacity to take folks to there. So that's just one, and that's, you know, that's based on that street team's assessment if they are capable of navigating and would actually follow through.
Right, and do we have a way to track if those people do make it to the
We do.
service? Okay, great. And I think, again, we need to have a category in our city's app for people out on the street to be able to let the city know that they've encountered a homeless person. I think, you know, where the location is identified, no, you know, photograph is allowed, but at least that it has where the location is, because I think people are much more likely to report a homeless person if they can just do it on their smartphone rather than calling the sheriffs. I think people feel very guilty about calling the sheriffs when they don't think that a homeless person is necessarily doing anything wrong, but they're not sure if they're substance abusers or, you know, so I think that would be it would make it a lot easier, I think, for our businesses and our residents to help us, to help the homeless people. And I think they're just much more likely to email or text. I think we need to make sure that any retail business that sells alcohol that's open after 9 or 10 p.m. has a security guard. You know, if they're open all night, just like that 7-Eleven, I think they're supposed to have a security guard. I think we need to make sure with our enforcement team that they actually have one. And I think that the sheriff's deputies, you know, if they're out on the street, they should be hanging out. You know, if they're looking for some place to write their report, you know, park by the 7-Eleven. I mean, you know, or park in one of these areas that we know that, you know, by the Sal Guariello, where people are taking baths in the fountain. I mean, we need to have the sheriff's presence. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to clarify what's actually before us tonight, which is the homeless needs assessment and survey results. So what we're actually doing tonight is receiving and providing input based on the needs assessment. In terms of the programs for service to the homeless, that's, you know, the input is valuable, but we're not really approving programmatic activity tonight. You have talked about some next steps that you're going to be taking based on the demographic survey, but you're not asking us to approve specific services. And you got some very valuable input from my colleague. But am I right? This is just the survey results?
Correct, and looking for input.
Okay, great.
Motion to receive and file.
Councilmember Horvath has some comments, but there is a motion. if there's a second, we can then take action on it, but Councilmember Horvath had her button pushed.
Thank you, Mayor. Since 2015, when I joined the council, we as a council have allocated over $1 million in additional resources for safety and homelessness issues. We've brought on additional service providers. We've secured bringing mental evaluation teams to a mental evaluation team to our sheriff's department to work on issues of mental illness. We've allocated additional bed night money to make sure that folks have a place to stay should they be connected to service. And we've even dedicated a whole staff person at City Hall to coordinating and tracking and helping to understand all of these issues. So while I appreciate that our focus tonight is on what is before us in terms of the needs assessment, I think the reason we are bringing up action items is because, as we heard from at least one member of the public tonight, people are trying to figure out what the action item is. And I think, I understand that this issue is complicated and complex as reflected by the data that's been presented to us tonight. But I also think we need to know what's now actionable. What do we know now that's actionable? And, we know now that a significant percentage of folks are coming, have a history of a criminal background. Are we coordinating with something like the Reentry Project to make sure that they're, and Susan Burton was just in West Hollywood last night doing a presentation, are we making sure that we're connecting with them to make sure that people have these services? How are we making sure that law enforcement is responsive when people call and they don't just say, well, it's a homeless person, so we'll get to it when we can. I understand that they have to prioritize their calls, but I think what people in the community are experiencing is, if not a perception or perception becomes reality, that there isn't an aggressive responsiveness approach. The action item is missing. And we do a great job learning about who our homeless are. We do a great job of, creating a whole arsenal of services that we can provide people. But if we're not connecting people, if that first response contact isn't happening, then I don't know how we're moving the needle. And is this information helping us understand whether we are moving the needle? That part of it, I'm not clear. I think I need to understand how we should be evaluating our progress based on this information, because right now it's a lot of information for me to understand. I think we get who our homeless people are a little bit better, but what are we going to do with it to make that difference? I think that's the question that I need answered.
And I think maybe we could ask Corey to give a brief response to that. Again, I don't think this item was designed to be an update on our homeless services, but I think that is scheduled for some point in the future. Corey?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is just the data information. This tells us more clearly who is here. I don't think that there are a lot of surprises in the information. Our teams are out there and working with these folks on a regular basis. I think what this gives us is another really solid data set. As we prepare, we have an application into the county for a planning grant, specifically targeted for cities. If we are selected to receive that grant, this would be another piece of data that would inform what that plan would look like. And as you may recall, a couple of years ago, you approved a report from the Human Services Commission subcommittee on kind of homeless needs assessments, kind of a state of services. This would update that and give us a more comprehensive, updated plan to address homelessness. And as you know, all of our efforts to do this are very kind of multidisciplinary. It is very public safety heavy, social services heavy, and then also the components where we're working with our economic development department on both the business piece of that work as well as their supervision of the library, where, as you know, we did pilot and we're continuing with our program there to provide direct service at the library 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. And so we've leveraged our contracted partners to provide that service and our relationship with the library to have another collaborative opportunity there. And I think what we're hearing, in the previous item and from you here tonight is that public safety is a very significant component of this, and that's what we're hearing from the residents as well. We understand that. There are some challenges that law enforcement face in terms of what they are allowed to do in taking action with respect to people who are living on the streets. But I will say they have done, as you outlined in next steps, they have done their initial homeless operation here in the morning with County DMH, with emergency response teams from the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority. And then they just did an operation last week where we had one of our teams from the LA LGBT Youth Center go out with them. And we'll continue to do those operations. They already have another operation scheduled for next month, and we'll be bringing in more of our teams, and they're bringing in more of the resources from the county, which is really helpful, and that's what we needed, is to have that relationship to bring more county DMH resources into West Hollywood as well. So those things are continuing, and we'll continue to address it on both sides with the social service offer, but with that law enforcement as support and backup as well.
When will we have a council item with an update on the services that we're currently providing with respect to homelessness? Services to get people into shelter, to get people into, treatment programs. When could we have that on our agenda?
You had, the last update was in August. It was August 21st, and that included service numbers up to the third quarter of our contract year for social services. We will be receiving their reports shortly for the end of the contract year, and you can receive those when the annual report comes to Council for Social Services, or if you want something sooner than that, we can just bring those numbers to you before then.
I think what I'm at least hearing from some of my colleagues is that there might be a desire to have that pulled out separately from our annual social services funding report, and that we have that discussion about, are we being effective and how are we measuring our effectiveness with the funding that we have allocated. Councilmember D'Amico.
Thank you, Mayor. I think maybe David could update us as well. I thought accompanying this survey was going to be the city manager's office's report on homeless initiatives that we had all, I think all, or at least three, maybe all five of us had written to the city manager about having some concerns about our homeless opportunities, initiatives, and the city manager's office said, I think you said, David, next November 7th.
Yes, the November 6th meeting.
November 6th meeting.
We plan to come back with an item to...
So perhaps it could join that. We could get some of the data, some of the human services work, and then this list of items that I think we were all, many of us were hoping to bring forward. And I just have two process questions. So homeless people move around. My guess is this is a point-in-time data set. We'll get another one. But do you have the sense that some of these things are sort of baselines, 30% women most of the time, that sort of thing? The people with HIV and other disabilities, about 20%. I mean, is that your sense that part is not going to vary so widely in West Hollywood?
So the count was a point-in-time count, but the surveys were done over time. Their teams went out several times to get them, so in that way, it wasn't necessarily point in time. It was trying to get as many up to the limit of the total number collected, which I thought was 97, but I could be wrong on that. So getting 44 is about half, or getting close to there. But one of the strengths of joining with the LASA survey is that we're using the same exact survey. So one of the things that they do in their report is they track from year to year. Mm-hmm. And I think a strength of this would be if you did it next year to really be able to know for sure whether these numbers are baseline numbers or a blip, and it's hard to say.
Okay. So I guess, and this is a question for Corey. How does this survey assist us in applying for a multitude of county grants? We could certainly go to the HIV Prevention Services Office and apply for what I would think would be a fairly sizable amount of money, dollars, if 20% of our homeless population is HIV positive, or 17%, or whatever I'm making, So, and certainly the county's dollars. I think in terms of actionable pieces. Yes, we have lots of program ideas, and I'm hoping that on November 7th we'll get to them, but I'm also wanting to know how we can position ourselves best to help you move your larger set of program ideas and priorities along.
One of the things that we'll be able to do is that in many places, people will have a lot of applications for those Measure H dollars based on maybe an idea or a previous service provision or something that their provider network is moving forward. We have really substantive data for our community that we can push forward and do kind of targeted work. The way we're doing that is we remain very connected to the County Homeless Initiative and LASA, which are making announcements on a fairly regular basis about new opportunities either for hiring or for applications. We were on a call today about permanent supportive housing and some service matches and things we can look at. We'll continue to do that work. And one thing I just want to add about the numbers, because some of the count information can get confusing. Our LASA count for the point-in-time count in January was 105. But what that reflects is 92 individuals who were counted. The number between 92 and 105 is based on the formulas that LASA uses as a conversion. So a car in West Hollywood most typically has one person in it, but they use a factor that makes it 1.15 or something. Don't hold me to the exact conversion. And so our number of surveys completed at 44 that were valid and able to go through gives us a 47% response when LA County has approximately 57,000 people and had 5,000 some surveys. So we really did, because we used our providers so effectively, got a much better picture of who's on our streets, and certainly people move around. But the other two we got at 46 surveys would have gotten us to 50%. But those two couldn't be counted because they had already been asked to participate in a previous survey. So they really, those teams, they did stagger their hours. They went out at different days and different days of the week, different times of day to make sure they were capturing as many folks as they could. The LASA teams that were here, you know, they do great work. They got 5 surveys and 3 tracks, and our teams, you know, really went out and did the work and got 44, which is really incredible. And you know, we're very grateful for their work in doing that work and getting that many surveys completed. It takes a long time to complete those surveys, and they're very personal questions, and that they were able to do that is really a testament to the relationships that they have been building with folks on the street already.
Thank you very much.
I just want to say whatever suggestions I made that aren't appropriate for this item, that David, hopefully it'll be appropriate for the item that the city manager is putting together as next steps.
Okay, yeah, and that item will focus more on what we would do locally based on the concerns you expressed during the public safety comment and over the last several months.
I wanted to wrap up by thanking staff and the consultants for their work on this. The information isn't particularly surprising in terms of its statistic validity. I think the fact that our staff and our service providers say that it really confirms what they're seeing. And it doesn't surprise us that homeless individuals in West Hollywood are more likely to be LGBT than the general county population. They're more likely to be living with HIV than the general population. They skew somewhat younger. We know that we have a significant number of homeless LGBT youth in the city, and that probably drives the age numbers down. The fact that there are a significant number of people with criminal histories doesn't surprise us at all either, because a lot of homeless individuals do have issues with criminal activities. We also know that a lot of LGBT younger people in particular, if they're homeless on the street, they'll turn to sex work for survival, which can create conflicts with law enforcement, and some of them will engage in petty theft and other crimes such as vandalism. So it's not surprising that many of them have a criminal history. I think we need to be as was said, we need to be aware that there are some who have histories that are quite violent, and some who have histories that are relatively minor offenses. So we don't want to stereotype them all into the same boat, but it does indicate that law enforcement has to be part of our efforts to solve the problem of homelessness. So this is great information. I know that the city manager and staff will be coming back, and we're still on the homeless subcommittee, so we will work with you too as you bring back the next report and suggestions for either augmenting or changing our current services. So thank you all. Are we ready to vote on this? We have a motion to adopt the recommendation, which is to receive and file, and it is approved. Thank you, and thank you for staying later. We have two quick items, 5B, which is Russian Advisory Board appointment. Are we ready with this?
I'm ready.
We have 2S. I'm prepared to act on this. Any nominations? We'll open it for nominations, Russian Advisory Board appointment.
I'd like to nominate Katerina Kutepova for the Russian Advisory Board.
Are there any further nominations?
I would second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we appoint Ekaterina Kutepova to the Russian Advisory Board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I think it carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Horvath? Okay, I didn't hear you. All right, so the only item of pulled consent was 2S, and I pulled this. Thank you for bringing this forward, Lindsay. The one thing I wanted to say about this, I did talk to our staff that deal with animal issues in the city of West Hollywood. They told me that they haven't had an actual report of a coyote in West Hollywood this last year. I've heard that there have been some reports in social media, but one of the things we really need to do is encourage people to call City Hall and let us know when they do see a coyote. I also wanted to say that given how few coyotes actually come down to West Hollywood, I hope the intention here is that the staff is supposed to spend a limited amount of time on this. I don't think it warrants, a $100,000 study of coyote management when we have so few that impact our community.
The intention in bringing a plan forward is to help people understand that the city can help respond to these issues, so they should report, number one. And number two, in understanding what the process would be if the city didn't develop an action plan. These coyotes, the default action is to euthanize them. And so I think that's not really consistent with what our community's values have been. And so bringing this plan forward, the Humane Society pretty much has a templated approach. So they've done a lot of the work for us, and I want to thank Joy, who's on the board for the Humane Society, for bringing this to my attention. They have an action plan that we can work into what is appropriate for our community already. So I don't expect it to be a long, drawn-out process. I know this isn't an epidemic that we're facing in the city, but when it does happen, it's nice to know that there's an action plan in place.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Okay, let's go ahead and vote. All right, it is approved. Any additional public comment, any additional council member comments?
Just one quick comment from me. I will not be present at the Congress of Boards and Commissions. I have a standing Monday night appointment, and so will not be with you all at that event.
All right, so we will be adjourning to the board and commission meeting, the annual Congress on October 30th.
Yes, at 6:00 p.m. We'll start here in council chambers and move up to the library.
All right, thank you.
Be in costume?
Per the mayor, if you want to
I
wear a
think
costume.
we should make it
you
as
can-
fun as possible. We
Yes.
can get work done and still dress up, so,
Wanted to?
yeah. But if you're dressing up on Monday night, you better have a different costume on Tuesday, that's all I'm saying. I know.
No repeats, no.
And we'll, are we letting commissioners and board members know that they're free to and encouraged?
Yes, we are.
All right. What are you wearing, Yvonne?
I don't know yet.
You haven't decided what your costume is going to be. The best city clerk in the world costume. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're adjourned.